The transaction command allows you to group events together based on specified constraints. The transaction command groups together events that share the same value in one or more fields. The transaction command will create much larger events, which will be our transaction events that all share the same value in that field, and we can then apply additional options to the transaction command to control them based on what they start with and end with, control the overall time of our transactions, and we can also work with specific fields that are added in the sidebar when piping to the transaction command. Now, if multiple fields are specified within the transactions field list, events with common values in all or some of the fields are grouped into a single transaction. When adding more than one field to the field list in the transaction command will return events with the same value in both fields, the same value in one field or the other. Let's take a look at a couple examples. In this basic search, we're looking across the web index source type of access combined, and we can see we're getting events back. Some of these events may share the same JSession ID, meaning that they pertain to the same user session transaction. So what we can do is pipe to the transaction command, pass it that JSession ID field. Our results will look like this. These events look a lot larger because multiple individual events went into them, each of those events sharing the same value in that JSession ID field. So essentially here, if we have transaction events that have more than 5 individual events within them, we will see an option to expand these events and show all of the lines contained within that event. Each of these transaction events containing a date timestamp and looking like the usual events that we're familiar with. If we take a look at the fields that apply to each transaction event, we can see that quite a few of these fields have multiple values, making them multi-valued fields. Because these transaction events are going to contain multiple unique individual events that share the same value in one field, these merged fields can be treated like multi-valued fields because they have multiple values from these individual events. So if we go ahead and take a look at an example here, run a search across index equal to web, source type of access combined, across the last 24 hours. And we take a look at our field sidebar and we'll notice that we have this JSession ID field, which is the cookie assigned at session time for each user session. I will make that a selected field so that it appears along the bottom row of each event, and I can compare the values of this JSession ID field within each event. Looking at this first event, we can see this value of JSession ID, comparing it to the value in this next event. It looks like they are the same, meaning that these two events pertain to the same user session. We have some additional events that have that same JSession ID. There may be additional events on subsequent pages with that same JSession ID, so we would like to group together all of the events that share the same value in that field. We'll go ahead and pipe to the transaction command, specify JSession ID, run that search, and we can see that we went from about 10,000 events to 911 events. And if we take a look at these events themselves, they look a lot larger. And notice I have the option to show all 15 lines. If we look closely, here's one date timestamp, here's another. That is what separates one event from another. So we can see we have multiple individual events that went into this one transaction event. If I expand it, take a look at the fields, we can see we have the status field with different HTTP status codes. We have the action field with multiple customer actions. We have the bytes field with multiple bytes, category ID, and a few others. All other shared fields of a transaction will be merged. Now, in addition to these fields, the transaction also populates a couple fields in the sidebar. Those fields are duration and event count. Duration will contain values which represent the time difference between the first and last event in the transaction. That will be represented in seconds, whereas the event count will be the number of unique events that went into a transaction. If we take a look at the sidebar, we'll notice here that we have the duration and event count fields. And if we make these selected fields as well, what we'll be able to see right below here is the number of events that are in this transaction, which are 15 unique events. The duration here is 104 seconds, which is the time difference between the first and last event timestamps within this transaction. And so we can see that those numeric values differentiate for each transaction event. Now, one thing to keep in mind about transactions is the transaction command requires the events to be organized in reverse chronological order for it to work properly. When a search directly precedes the transaction command, the results are returned in reverse chronological order. However, it is possible to configure the results to be resorted in a different order. In that case, being sure that the events are being returned in reverse chronological order, we can use the sort command on_time, sorting _time in descending order to be sure that these events are organized properly for the transaction command.